Yella Beezy? The name alone used to shake car speakers across Dallas, turn clubs upside down, and light up timelines like a permanent trending tag. But 2026? That's about to be a whole different stage. We're not talking rolling loud crowds or fresh chains on red carpets. We're talking wooden benches, courthouse mics, lawyers flipping pages, and a trial date that has officially been confirmed for 2026, and the entire rap community is already bracing for impact. Fans are shocked, bloggers are refreshing dockets, and everyone from Texas to TikTok is asking the same question: is Beezy about to walk into the biggest courtroom showdown hip-hop has seen in years? This isn't just a legal moment. This is a storyline, a real-life season finale with no scriptwriters, no retakes, and no mute button. Because the allegations tied to Yella Beezy, the rumors, the whispers, the street narratives, the industry side-eyes, they never truly disappeared. They just went quiet like a storm holding its breath. And now the storm has a date. 2026 is locked in, and insiders are claiming this trial could explode into testimony leaks, witness drama, industry betrayal narratives, and courtroom moments that will live on the internet forever. Imagine the scene. Cameras outside the courthouse gates, fans yelling his lyrics while protest signs shake in the same air, reporters bumping shoulders with street affiliates, family members praying in one corner, rivals watching silently from another, and social media acting as judge, jury, and peanut gallery all at once. Sources are already teasing that key names might resurface, old alliances could be questioned, and surprises could drop mid-trial like diss tracks no one saw coming. Emotions ran high before it even began. And once those courtroom doors close in 2026, the world won't just be watching, it'll be glued, because this trial isn't just confirmed, it's destined to trend. Yella Beezy never imagined that 2026 would open like this. Not with music headlines, not with show announcements, not with interviews, but with a trial confirmation that would hit harder than any diss track. The courthouse wasn't just a building anymore, it was the center of a new rap narrative, one that even Texas streets were calling bigger than albums, bigger than features, bigger than pride. The allegations surrounding Beezy had simmered for years like a pot left on low flame. Everyone smelled it, but nobody stirred it publicly. Until now. And when the docket finally locked in 2026, it felt like the internet collectively inhaled and said, "This is it." This is the moment the rumors stop being background noise and start being evidence. Fans were already crafting theories, one side screaming his innocence like a hook they memorized, the other side sharpening narratives like prosecutors rehearsing arguments. In Dallas, the city where Beezy built his sound, every corner store conversation sounded like a podcast snippet. He put on for the city, why would he crash out like that? One fan argued outside a barbershop. Another fired back, talent don't erase choices, bro, court don't care about playlists. But even the skeptics couldn't deny the theatrical gravity of it all. This trial had plot energy, reality TV energy, rap documentary energy, and everyone wanted front row seats. Beezy's inner circle felt the pressure first, not the judge, not the lawyers, his own people. Loyalty in rap is currency, but courtroom loyalty is a different bank. His manager, whose job was once tour logistics and brand deals, was now scanning legal briefs like they were contract clauses. His cousin Marlo, who grew up shouting "Beezy gang or no gang," suddenly sounded unsure when he said it. Marlo loved his cousin but loved the block's logic too, and the block's logic was whispering new math. Family over fame, but survival over everything, Marlo muttered to a friend at 2 a.m., unaware someone nearby was recording audio on their phone. Beezy himself was sitting in a studio when he got the call. Not a studio in the Hollywood sense, but a Dallas room padded with memories and ambition. He had been mixing a new track, his voice cutting through 808s like familiar thunder, when his phone buzzed with news that changed the rhythm of his year. His producer froze the beat. "What's up?" he asked. Beezy exhaled, slow and measured. "Court, 2026, it's official." The silence that followed felt heavier than any bass drop. The producer nodded, not knowing whether to restart the beat or the conversation. The first emotional wave hit his mother, Trina. Trina had always been Beezy's compass, the voice that said think twice when the world said act now. She wasn't built for viral drama, she was built for protective prayers. But protection sounds different when the threat has a courtroom seal. When Trina heard 2026 was locked, her voice cracked slightly before she steadied it. My son ain't no monster. Y'all made him one in the rumors. But rumors don't require signatures, trials do. Trina was now preparing to defend not just a person but a storyline painted by headlines. His brother Cash reacted differently. Cash was younger, angrier, louder in emotion but quieter in logic. "They wanna make an example out of you," he snapped in a heated late-night argument. "Ain't no example when you got nothing to prove," Beezy replied, trying to stay calm. "Calm don't win court," Cash shot back. Cash wasn't trying to be disrespectful, he was trying to be right. Fear often disguises itself as rage in rap families, this was no exception. Their voices overlapped like verses with no hook to organize them. Friends who once hyped his success now debated his optics. The group chat shifted from drop dates to defense strategy, and the tone changed like a beat switching to minor chords. One friend wrote, "Bro, public opinion is already forming. We need narratives that humanize you before the other side weaponizes silence." Another typed, "Narratives don't beat DNA, bro." Nobody realized how much truth sounded like a double-edged punchline until they read it back. Industry reactions were predictable but ruthless in timing, not predictable in conclusion but predictable in spectacle. Bloggers began teasing witness lists like they were feature track lists. "Who might testify?" they asked. Not what might happen, but who might happen. Because in rap trials, names are plot twists, alliances are subplots. History is a witness too, even when it's not subpoenaed. Beezy's mentor from early rap days, Og Quill, posted a video saying, "Streets raised you, but don't let the streets narrate you in court. Silence can look guilty to people who don't speak lawyer." Quill meant it as guidance, but fans took it as prophecy. "Quill knows something," the comments flooded. Og Quill didn't know anything new, but he understood story momentum, and this story was accelerating. The streets were now splitting into factions of narrative ownership. The real world doesn't need directors, but drama assigns roles anyway. Old rivals who once measured success by streams now measured it by suspicion. One rival joked on Instagram Live, "2026 gonna be a movie and I ain't talking trailers." People laughed, but laughter in rap drama is often a sound effect, not a conclusion. It fills space before the truth arrives. Beezy was starting to feel like his legacy was being edited by everyone but him. Music once felt like his loudest voice, now legal documents were louder. Rhythm once felt like his heartbeat, now countdowns were. Every day moving closer to 2026 sounded less like a calendar and more like a ticking producer tag in the background of his life. Tick, 2026, tick. Evidence, tick, speculation. His Aunt Nadia tried grounding the family. "Y'all arguing like Twitter threads, this is blood, not blogs," she said at a family dinner, but even dinner felt scripted now. Relatives who once talked mixtapes were now talking motives. "Inna lillahi vibes at the table," one cousin whispered, stirring anxiety like seasoning nobody asked for. And while the world argued narratives, the courthouse was quietly preparing structure. Structure that didn't care about hometown pride, rap clout, or emotional backstories. The courthouse was preparing rules, deadlines, testimonies. Cross-examinations, a story arc written by law, not lyrics. But the rap world, it was preparing reactions, because reactions are the second language of hip-hop drama. If rap had taught the world anything, it's that silence builds suspense and suspense builds virality. And virality was now waiting for 2026 like a lion waits for movement. It wasn't attacking yet, it was watching. The world outside thought the courtroom would be chaos, but the real chaos had already begun in conversations, loyalty debates, fan wars, family tension, group chat breakdowns, and the psychological weight of a year that had turned a rapper's life into an ongoing episodic event. The only thing 2026 had done so far was confirm the stage. The characters were already stepping into position, and the plot. It was rolling forward with no pause button, no capitals, no breath, no interruption, just motion, momentum, and a timeline moving closer and closer to a courtroom showdown that was beginning to feel less like a legal date, and more like destiny forming its own verse, one bar at a time, one conversation at a time, one rumor turning into relevance at a time, as Dallas, fans, family, and the internet itself held their collective breath, waiting for the next beat drop in a story that had only just opened its first chapter. The next beat drop came sooner than anyone expected, because legal storms don't wait for rollout schedules. The prosecution team in Texas had been quietly assembling a case file thick enough to look like a season's worth of episodes stacked into one finale. Every document felt like a breadcrumb trail leading back through years of speculation, street politics, and alliances that once looked unbreakable. Now those same alliances were being held under a microscope brighter than any ring light used in interviews. The lawyers weren't just preparing arguments, they were preparing narratives to counter narratives, knowing full well that in rap culture, public perception often tries to rewrite facts before courtrooms ever get a chance to speak. Beezy's defense attorney, Leanne Bridges, had a reputation for staying calm when headlines screamed loud, but even she knew this wasn't a calm case anymore. This was a cultural flashpoint. A trial that would be live tweeted, clipped, memed, and debated like a new album drop, except the tracklist was witness statements and the features were real people with real consequences. Leanne had been in high-profile courtrooms before, but never one that felt like a cross between street testimony and reality TV confessionals. She sat in her office surrounded by legal pads, sticky notes, and a whiteboard full of connection lines that looked like the world's most intense conspiracy diagram. Her team called it strategy, the internet would call it chaos fuel. Beezy met Leanne for a long conversation that stretched past midnight. "You gotta understand," she said, flipping through notes, "court sees behavior patterns, not beat patterns." Beezy leaned back, arms crossed, trying to stay composed. "So what's the pattern here? Success." Leanne shook her head slightly. "Pattern of pressure, optics, proximity, people, decisions, timing, reactions, and how those can be interpreted when silence fills the gaps." Beezy nodded, realizing for the first time how dangerous gaps could be when the world tries filling them for you. Outside the courthouse gates, fans had already started gathering months ahead of 2026 like pilgrims lining up before a festival. Some held signs saying "Beezy for Dallas," others wore shirts printed with lyrics from songs that once felt like anthems. Now those anthems were being chanted in parking lots, hallways, gas stations, and Instagram lives, echoing a debate nobody could mute. One fan yelled into a camera, "They can't cage a legend." Another quietly responded in the background, "Court don't care about legend stats." The clash of belief and reality was louder than arguments themselves. It was the energy between words, the subtext, that carried more momentum than speech. The prosecution side dropped a statement through a spokesperson, saying, "Justice isn't trending, it's procedural." But nothing in rap culture stays procedural for long. Bloggers took that line, twisted it into clips, and added dramatic background music like it was a movie trailer. Fans reacted instantly. "Procedural sounds like scared," one tweet said. "Scared sounds like procedural," another countered. The courtroom hadn't opened yet, but the internet had already appointed itself as opening act. Beezy's mother, Trina, flew into Texas earlier than planned, her heart heavier than her suitcase. She had been avoiding interviews, but interviews found her anyway. A reporter approached her outside a hotel lobby. "Ma'am, do you think 2026 will clear his name?" Trina stopped walking, eyes steady, voice measured but emotional under the surface. "Clear names don't need thinking, they need truth." The reporter nodded, but the internet took that line and ran with it like a relay baton dipped in gasoline. Truth became trending audio for a day. But trending audio doesn't equal courtroom truth, it equals momentum. Beezy's brother Cash dropped a cryptic Instagram story saying, "Blood gets tested, loyalty gets testified." Fans screenshotted it instantly. "Cash hinting a betrayal," one blog wrote. Another speculated, "Is family divided before testimony?" But the family wasn't divided by choice, it was divided by pressure. Pressure that comes when headlines start drafting your story before you even decide your stance. Family dinners turned into quiet interrogations. Celebrations turned into hushed debates. Prayers turned into what-if whispers. Love was still there, but now it had subtitles nobody asked for. Marlo, Beezy's cousin, began pulling away slightly, not because he doubted blood, but because courtrooms don't negotiate street logic. He met a childhood friend near a late-night taco spot. "Bro, what's loyalty in court terms?" The friend shrugged. "Loyalty is presence, evidence is pressure, pressure is interpretation. Interpretation is dangerous." Marlo sighed, realizing that street language doesn't translate clean in legal spaces. "So what do we speak now?" The friend tapped his temple gently. "Timing. That's the language everyone understands." Og Quill called Beezy again, his voice carrying a mix of mentor concern and street hindsight. "Listen, nephew, 2026 gonna pull receipts, don't let receipts pull you." Beezy chuckled slightly despite the weight of the situation. "Receipts been pulling me since mixtapes," Quill sighed. "Nah, these receipts don't end in applause, they end in verdicts." The silence between them carried more weight than the words themselves. Silence was becoming a recurring character in this story, and everyone knew silence is the soil where suspicion tries growing roots. Industry peers were now reacting publicly, some defending, some distancing, none staying neutral. One rapper said on live, "Beezy ain't built for courtroom cages." Another countered, "Court ain't cages, it's consequences." None of these statements added evidence, but they added momentum. And momentum was the real currency of this moment. And while Leanne Bridges quietly prepared strategy, bloggers loudly prepared cliffhangers, fans prepared chants, rivals prepared commentary, and the family prepared emotional stakes, the timeline kept rolling closer to 2026 like a beat that refuses to end. Because once the court date hit the public docket, this stopped being a legal story alone and became a cultural storyline built on suspense. Pressure, loyalty, perception, timing, consequences, belief, doubt, gaps, speculation, narrative wars, street whispers, industry reactions, psychological weight. And a year that had officially switched from music era into courtroom era with no transition fade, just a hard cut into a new chapter that would continue moving forward with no pause, no capitals, no breath. No interruption, just motion, momentum, and the world watching every single frame before the courtroom cameras even started rolling. The world watching every single frame before the courtroom cameras even started rolling was only the appetizer. The main dish was being prepped by time itself. January 2026 hit, and Dallas felt different. Not quieter, but charged, like a city holding two truths at the same time, one spoken, one felt. Yella Beezy wasn't doing shows, but his name was doing stadium tour without him. The headlines were the billboards. The rumors were the opening DJ. And the fan debates were the sold-out crowd, yelling at each other instead of lyrics, creating a noise so loud it felt like evidence to people who never read a legal file in their life. One morning, Beezy woke up to his phone buzzing like it had a personal vendetta. His notifications weren't just popping, they were boxing. Every blogger was suddenly a court analyst. Every analyst was suddenly a street philosopher. And every philosopher was suddenly a headline writer. One blog posted a story claiming a mystery witness had been spotted near the courthouse doing an interview test run. The witness wasn't named. But that's the trick, unnamed characters in rap news are like jump scares, you don't need a face to feel the impact. Beezy scrolled, annoyed but unsurprised. "Why they narrating ghosts now?" he muttered. His girlfriend Jada overheard him, arms crossed, tone sharp like a snapped hi-hat. "Because ghosts trend faster than people, that's why." Jada had always been Team Beezy, but even she was feeling the pressure of a year that had turned into a media trial before the legal trial even opened. "They don't want truth, they want tension," she added. "Well, tension don't pay my lawyer fees," Beezy replied, rubbing his forehead. Jada sighed, sitting beside him. "Fees get paid in cash. Reputations get paid in clips." Beezy stood up, pacing like a man whose thoughts were trying to outrun a timeline that moves faster than logic. "Clips don't change verdicts." "Nah," Jada replied, "but they change the judges before the judge." Beezy paused. That line hit different, not because it was poetic, but because it was procedural truth in street slang packaging. Meanwhile, Trina, Beezy's mother, was attending church more frequently than interviews. Prayer circles were her group chats now. The sisters in the congregation formed a protective barrier around her like spiritual security guards. "God writes straight on crooked lines," one church auntie said, squeezing Trina's hand. But even God's lines weren't safe from screenshot culture anymore. Someone recorded that audio and posted it with sad piano background music. Fans reacted, "Trina emotional in church, signs point to innocence." Another countered, "Innocence don't need signs, guilt needs guesses." The timeline was becoming a courtroom of opinions that had no judge but millions of jurors. Beezy's defense team was now noticing a pattern too. Not legal pattern, media pattern. Every rumor spike was followed by fan reaction surges, followed by rival commentary, followed by new rumor spikes. Like a producer sampling the same loop but adding distortion each time. Leanne Bridges called it perception stacking. Her assistant called it algorithm dominoes. The public called it tea, but tea in rap culture isn't a drink. It's evidence seasoning. Beezy met Og Quill again at a private lounge. Quill wasn't there to mentor, he was there to warn. Listen, if they drag names into this trial, make sure your name ain't the one that sounds dragged. Beezy chuckled, trying to lighten the moment. Quill didn't laugh back. Jokes are bridges in music, they're cliffs in court. Beezy exhaled. So what do I do? Quill tapped the table twice, slow like a metronome. Control timing, timing controls tone. Tone controls perception, perception controls pressure, pressure controls people, and people, they control leaks. Leaks were now the new mixtapes, everyone expected them, nobody could confirm them. But everyone prepared reactions for them anyway. One blogger claimed an audio snippet had surfaced of a witness saying, "Beezy loved the block more than the booth at one point." The audio was fake, but the impact was real. Fans were shocked, rivals were intrigued. The family was left divided again, not in loyalty but in language, some speaking defense, some speaking doubt, some speaking survival. Beezy's brother Cash confronted Marlo one night outside a gas station. "Bro, you moving weird in the chats." Marlo shrugged. "I'm moving smart, not weird." Cash stepped closer. "Smart looks scared." Marlo shook his head. "Nah. Scared looks loud, smart looks silent." Cash paused. The silence between them felt louder than the argument itself. Silence was becoming strategy, narrative, armor, suspicion, language, pattern, currency, character, twist, and pressure valve all at once. Beezy realized his 2026 chapter wasn't being written by law alone anymore. It was being co-authored by perception, belief, doubt, timing, tension, loyalty, family logic, street language, media distortion, unnamed ghosts, cryptic punchlines, rival commentary, church audio leaks, lawyer warnings, fan juries. Dallas bias, algorithm dominoes, perception stacking. And a countdown moving closer to a courtroom showdown that felt less like a legal event and more like a cultural earthquake waiting for its moment to crack the ground open. And exactly where the cracks would form next was the only question the world cared about. Because the courtroom doors hadn't opened yet, but the narrative floodgates were already broken, spilling forward into the final stretch of a story that would continue with no pause, no capitals, no interruption, just motion, momentum, and pressure building into the next chapter. Just motion, momentum, and pressure building into the next chapter. That's what it felt like until the actual pre-trial hearings began shaping the human cracks in the story. By late 2026, the courtroom still hadn't delivered a verdict, but it had already delivered villains, victims, plot twists, and emotional cross-examinations outside the legal ones. The real trial was scheduled months ahead, but the pre-trial hearings were the pressure cooker everyone underestimated. Because hearings don't decide guilt, they decide narrative direction. And narratives in rap culture move like hurricanes with broadcast deals. Beezy arrived for his first major pre-trial appearance wearing a clean black fit, not flashy, not loud, not chain-heavy, strategic. Jada had picked the outfit herself. "Jury might not see drip, but they see discipline," she said earlier that morning. Beezy didn't argue. Arguing was a luxury now. Perception was the economy. The courthouse steps were crowded like it was the premiere of a show nobody paid for but everyone auditioned in. Fans were there with phones high like antennas catching emotional frequencies. Reporters were bumping tripods like elbows in a pit. And somewhere in the mix were street affiliates whose silence had more subtitles than captions. Beezy's mother Trina sat in the front row of the courtroom gallery clutching a small rosary in her hand, whispering prayers under her breath like low-volume lawyer rehearsals for the soul. Beside her sat Cash, jaw tight, eyes sharp, emotions turbulent. Cash wasn't built for whispered drama, he was built for shouted loyalty, but loyalty sounded different when mixed with fear. Fear that had a date, a docket, and consequences written in font heavier than bold. Marlo sat on the opposite side of the gallery, posture calm, eyes observant, silence intentional. Intentional silence is power in court, but interpreted silence is power on the internet. And the internet was interpreting everything. The judge entered, not interested in optics, but optics entered the room anyway. Because optics don't need permission. The prosecution lawyer began outlining procedural timelines, evidence admissibility, and witness protocols. Boring to the average viewer, but bloggers turned those boring lines into suspense trailers. Admissibility became who's about to get admitted into the drama. Witness protocols became who's about to break protocol, because protocol in rap news means loyalty rules, not legal ones. The first dramatic twist hit when a rumor spread that a former associate of Beezy, someone known only as Slate, might be appearing on the witness list. Nobody could confirm the name, but the streets recognized the silhouette of the narrative. Slate was a childhood friend of Beezy who once protected him in street situations, but sources were now twisting his role like a producer pitching a remix no one asked for. One blogger claimed Slate turned state, another countered, nah, Slate turned silent. But the tension was real enough to move timelines. Timelines move culture, culture moves pressure, pressure moves people, and people move leaks. Beezy didn't speak on it publicly, but silence is loud when the world wants sound bites, and the world wanted sound bites. Jada begged him, say something, even half something. Beezy shook his head. Half statements make full suspects. Jada sighed, defeated but loyal. Loyalty sometimes means letting silence finish its sentence. Then came the second twist. During a recess, Trina confronted Marlo in a courthouse hallway. No cameras officially allowed, but cameras unofficially everywhere. Why you sitting on the other side, Marlo? Trina asked, voice trembling under steadiness. Marlo kept calm. I'm sitting on the side that keeps him free longer, Trina frowned. Free don't need sides, Marlo shook his head. Nah, free needs strategy, strategy needs distance, distance needs perception, perception needs silence, silence needs discipline. Discipline buys time, Trina whispered, and time buys truth. Marlo finally met her eyes. Nah, time buys interpretation, interpretation decides pressure, pressure decides people, people decide leaks, leaks decide chaos. Chaos decides culture. Trina exhaled sharply, realizing that this year had turned everyone into philosophers against their will. Cash overheard the conversation and snapped, y'all talking like law books mixed with street poems. Trina placed a hand on Cash's chest gently. Law is poems now, son, poems with consequences. Cash looked away, emotional. Emotional is human, but courtrooms translate emotion differently. Differently is dangerous when interpretation is the judge before the judge. The family dinner that followed days later felt scripted despite being real. Relatives argued about loyalty, argued about timing. Timing was arguing about legacy. Legacy was arguing about survival. Survival was arguing about truth. Truth was arguing about perception. Perception was arguing about pressure. Pressure was arguing about leaks. Leaks were arguing about chaos. Chaos was arguing about culture. Culture was arguing about headlines. Headlines were arguing about 2026. 2026 was arguing about Beezy, and in the middle of all of it was one man who once controlled clubs but couldn't control narratives the same way. Because clubs respond to music, courtrooms respond to pressure, and pressure responds to perception, and perception responds to timing. And timing was the only language Beezy still had a chance to control before 2026 delivered its next beat drop inside the courtroom doors, where the allegations, rumors, witnesses, family tension, street bias, media distortion, loyalty tests, philosophical clashes, perception stacking, unnamed ghosts, cryptic statements, hallway confrontations, emotional crossfires, belief battles, rival commentary, rosary prayers. Procedural boredom turned suspense trailers, silence interpreted as sound bites, discipline used as armor, armor mistaken for distance, distance mistaken for doubt, doubt mistaken for guilt, guilt mistaken for trend. Trend mistaken for truth, and truth waiting quietly like a final witness whose name wouldn't trend until the moment it actually spoke, all collided into the final chapter of the main body, completing the 2026 courtroom era that had only one thing still pending. What happens when the doors close, the witnesses rise, the lawyers speak, the rosary stops moving, the silence gets interpreted one last time, and the world realizes that real court chaos is never the noise in the room, it's the noise that comes after. And just like that, the 2026 trial of Yella Beezy became more than a legal case. It turned into a cultural fault line running straight through Dallas, through family, through fanbases, and through the rap industry itself. Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and every hearing added more tension than clarity. Some say silence is strategy, others say silence is suspicious, but one thing is undeniable. 2026 is about to be remembered as the year courtroom drama met rap legacy head-on. Alliances got questioned, family members stood on opposite sides, bloggers hyped unnamed witnesses like plot twists, and rivals added commentary like ad-libs nobody asked for. The family was left divided not because love faded, but because pressure forced interpretation into every conversation. Now everyone is waiting for the moment when those courtroom doors finally close and the testimonies start dropping like unpredictable beat switches. What happens when witnesses rise? Who speaks? Who stays silent? And who might shock the world mid-trial? The questions are still open and the suspense is building louder than any headline so far. But now it's your turn because you're not just watching the story anymore, you're part of the timeline that carries it forward. You know what to do. Hit like if you felt the tension, subscribe if you're here for every twist 2026 might throw, and comment right now with your own take, innocent or misunderstood. Calculated or targeted? This story moves with your voice, so don't hold back. Drop your thoughts, join the conversation, and stay locked in because 2026 isn't just confirmed, it's about to explode on the timeline and you don't want to miss a single moment.